Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunch hour and
Afternoon.
the entrepreneur's journey live. I'm Natalie Fairchild, and my co-host is Martin Noches. There, hey, I put a
Hello.
smile on your face
That you did.
because it's hard to
We
it's
knew it
hard
was
to
going to
say.
happen. We knew it was going to happen one day.
It's hard to say, and it's hard to spell, but I'm learning. So we're in February, crazy as that is. Oh my goodness. And we in the Pacific Northwest got pummeled by some snow and ice. Basically, ice is what really keeps us down. And that really brought up a lot of questions, a lot of discussion I have a human resources coffee talk that I lead. Questions came up about that. People were puzzled, lots of
Yep.
different scenarios. I was just on the Society of Human Resources Management website, and they have a whole new article because they were inundated with calls. And do you pay employees? How do you pay them? Besides policies, do we have a policy for this? So we thought it'd be a great topic to bring up and start talking about. And it sounds like we've got some questions too from our listeners. So that'll be great.
Yep. There was a bunch of conversation about it, obviously. Everyone was talking about snow apocalypse.
Yep.
We saw articles on the press. There was
Yeah.
quite a bit of a stir about the sort of the suddenness of the whole thing, right? It just sort of comes at you, and as a business, you have to figure out how to navigate something that is pretty much out of your control.
Pretty much.
And
And as a
that's the
business owner,
yeah.
as as a business owner myself, we definitely felt it. And I'm glad
Oh,
it
for
happened
sure.
in January rather than December when, it's all the hustle and bustle and there's tons of things going on, tons of shopping that needs to be done, events. But it never helps whenever it is, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And part of what we wanted to talk about today is, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about snow and ice, but we're also going to try to discuss all things of that nature, right? Anything that is outside of the bubble of your control that directly affects your business or your entrepreneurship, and how to navigate it, how to handle it, how to go about what comes next.
And you think we would be pretty good at this because we came out of COVID, but it all hit us differently. And I kind of remember feeling like, God, this feels like COVID, like nothing is happening. Like
Mm.
the ball is not moving forward. And I don't know, it kind of was reminiscent for a tad bit. And it's kind of interesting how it brought up a whole new scenario.
But you
Um,
know that was the most, and I really had to check myself, right? Because that was my first thought with that article. I read that article, and the business owner who's featured in it, I kept thinking, I kept reading through it, and I could feel that, she had an experience of hardship, and there was a difficult couple of days for her. But in the back of my mind was like, but don't you remember being in lockdown for 3 months, right? 4 months at a time? Like,
right.
that should have prepared you for this may happen again. Right?
Totally,
And
totally. And if
and
we could
again,
get
right?
through that, but we were all like, "Oh, what is this? This
And,
doesn't happen to us anymore."
and again, I kept going back and forth between the feeling, the empathy for the situation she's going through, and the going like, well, what short memories we have,
Totally.
right? It's
100%.
it's an interesting thing that we have such a
Mhm.
short memory for something that transcended.
Like labor, having a baby, right?
Yeah. Well,
Short-term
I
memory.
wouldn't be able to tell you specifically on that one,
Just
but
trust me.
I've been around it. I've been around it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So yeah, it came up a lot with the Sherm group, lots of different things. And hey, Candace, you're popping in.
I am. I'm popping in.
Come
So
on
Um,
apparently, we
in.
heard from some people as well.
yes. So that was one heck of a response to our survey. Gathered up a bunch of questions from that. comments on the various videos and stuff. So what I've done is I put together some questions for you guys. I've grouped them. I've noted everybody's name and contact information that's sent in these questions, but since we're talking about employees, we're going to keep it anonymous today, so you guys can speak freely. So a big question that came up was transportation. A big question that
Yeah.
came up was reliable transportation. So I'm going to give you two questions because they're from two different people, but they're very, very similar.
Okay.
So the first question was from a gentleman who says, reliable transportation is really the only concern when it comes to weather. So I've offered to pick up my employees or pay for their Ubers. However, you're already laughing. You know where this question goes. Don't you? If an employee declines, can and how I write them up for missing work?
Write
Mm,
them up. Oh,
Okay.
mm.
Another question along the similar lines, and then I'll let you two discuss. I know for a fact that some of my employees drive a four-wheel drive or snow-capable truck, and at least one lives within walking distance. Is there a way to word my inclement weather policy to excuse some, but not all employees from coming in?
Oh,
So
it's a
feel
tough
free to
one.
discuss reliable transportation and how
reliable
you approach this
transportation.
with your employees.
Oh, so tough. But then
Thank you,
you're
Candace.
making an assumption that they have reliable transportation, for one thing.
Yeah.
And, there's hills in our area and there's really flat area. And how do you make some come in and not others? I think the one thing that we did learn from COVID is that most positions, or a lot of positions, can work from home. We all have that technology. We're comfortable with it. We know how to do it. So there's that. But if they're in a position to have to go to the location, it's a retail type of place, that's really difficult. Now, I have also an example of this. I was at a store locally. I won't say which one, but it's a mass. It's got zillions of locations. And I said, "Hey, were you guys open yesterday?" And she said, "No." She goes, it was my day off, but the people that were scheduled could not get here safely. And the district manager wants to write them up."
Oh,
Yeah. And so it feels very corporate when you start talking about write ups, and it doesn't feel like you're talking about the safety, and you're holding on to the bottom line, which as business owners or corporate, you can tend to go to that fear spot, right? Like, crap, what do we do now? This does not fit with the budget. But then there's another point where you just have to go, safety is the most important thing. I just gotta let go.
look, there's going to be a bit of a theme on my end on this one. Okay, I'm just going to advance you this. It's the short-sightedness for me. You
Mhm,
know, there's this great book from Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. And I always
mhm,
sort of give it to people who are struggling with seeing their business in a too narrow of a view. And the point of being in business really is staying in business, right? It's sort of staying in the game. And something like this is a fundamental threat, right? You're not going to make any revenue. If you close, revenue is zero.
mhm.
But the other side of it is, well, what if your policy says, hey, if you're, and again, I'm going to exaggerate the point, but if you're known to be a person with a four-wheel drive capable vehicle, you must be in the office, right? And that person gets hurt or killed.
Mhm.
Talk
Yeah.
about a fundamental threat to your existence of your business, right?
Yeah.
That family has all the right in the world to sue you for that, and they probably will. Now,
And
here's the
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
and the other thing is, right, to your point, is it going to be really worth it, right? Like, how long is this snowstorm going to last that you're willing to say to people, look, I know you're concerned for your fundamental safety, but you need to be in the office.
Mhm, mhm.
It's kind of a weird message 2 cents, right? The how it's received is, first of all, okay, yeah, sure, you may scare them into coming into the office or coming into the place of business. That's not going to be a great customer service day. I guarantee you that, right?
And your culture just
They're
went,
going to tell every customer that kind of thing.
yeah.
That
I
person
just
told
asked,
you that.
I just asked, were you guys open yesterday? And I got
You
all
didn't
of that.
ask your district manager an asshole, but basically you got the answer.
I think I did after.
But
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, so talk about culture. Culture is probably one of the most intangible assets that you have in an organization or a business. And it takes so much time, effort, and money to build
Hmm.
that you're really gonna take a wrecking ball to it for a couple of days worth of closure.
And we have to remember, everyone has a culture. It's either good or
It's
it's
either
not
good
so
or
good.
crappy.
But to get to that good level, you're right, it does. It takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of those things. And yeah, and the culture is just going, it's tanking and it's hard to get employees. So you've got that issue.
Yep.
And it's really hard to rebound from that.
There's this point, right? One of the things that I used to tell people a lot, and I even spoke to your SHRM group too about
Yeah.
this, is that COVID gave people a perspective on something, right? It was like a
Yes.
collective approach to mortality, right? We could all have died. And at least the conversation was, there's people dying. So a lot of people
Hmm.
reevaluated what they did for a living. Like, is this worth it? Is it really my
Totally.
relationship to this place of business? Is it worth it? All this stress, anguish, cost, even,
Hmm.
right? They all
Hmm.
reevaluated the cost of going to work too,
Hmm.
and they're still dealing with that.
Hmm.
And so when something of a smaller scale like this thing we're talking about shows up, and the response of the business is like, I don't know how you're going to make it, but you're going to make it. That
Yeah.
message is, that person,
Hmm.
if it was me, I'd be looking for the next job on Monday.
Totally. I should go
Right?
back and check, see what happened.
I
Yeah,
would
for
know.
sure.
I would know that that's not my place.
Hmm.
Right? And
And
some
and
people are
it's
stuck.
just and it's just the reputation of the bad reputation that can come with corporate. You're a number. It's all
Yeah.
about the numbers. It's you're working for me type of
Now,
attitude.
now we need to talk about the other side, right? We need to
Right.
talk about the business owner, right? If you need to, if you're forced to close, like I said, that's a zero revenue day. That is tough. That's a hit. That is that's a thing to fix, a
Yeah.
thing to address, right? It's going to hurt. I had several of my clients come up with those questions, right? And one of the first things that I said is like, look, do you think that there's anything we can do about this, right? Is it one of those within your control or outside your control things? Most responded that's outside. Okay, so if it is, okay, should we talk about what we're doing when it's over, or should we talk about what we're doing about this thing that we cannot control?
Right.
Right? We really should talk about what we do when it's over, or if it's one of those things that doesn't have an end in sight. I mean, I remember the conversations you and I had at the beginning of lockdown in COVID. There was no
Yeah.
end in sight. We didn't know how long that was going to last. And we
Right.
had to look at, okay, well, what are we going to do that is controllable?
Right. And when you get that kind of answer, it's not controllable. That's the good and the bad news. Because
Yes.
if it's uncontrollable, you have to take your hands off the steering wheel and just relax a little bit because there's nothing you can do. And so stirring in that frantic fear spot, letting your employees feel that way, I've been there. I know
Yeah.
when I'm in that spot, it does no good for anyone.
But your tone, right? The conversations you're going to have, the decisions you're going to make are gonna match that energy. They're gonna match the
Mm-hmm.
fear energy. And as a
Mm-hmm.
species, we're not known for making the best decisions within the fear
Oh,
context, right? We're just
Lord
not.
knows I'm not.
We're just not. Um, the other thing is this, the other thing I said to my business owners is like, I try to put a little perspective on it. I said, okay, so you're having a couple of zero revenue days. Have you ever had a single 3x or 2x day?
Mm-hmm.
And they all said, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that is possible too, right? It's there's a scenario where you could foreseeably have a bunch of 1.25x days going forward, and it'll be okay. Will you break
And
your records from last year? Probably not. Would it be equivalent? Probably. And
and what my heart tells me is when I go to that space and accept that I can't control the situation, then what happens is I feel like things open up and make up for what happened.
mhm,
Um, and that can be the intangible culture, that can be, people coming back to work and trying to do everything they can to help the business. That can be whatever it is.
yeah, definitely. And the the conversations to be had, right? I don't want to jump the gun on this, but you can also really take advantage of those times when you have to close down.
Totally.
Tons of conversations with people about, hey, maybe you should do this, right? Maybe you should create a training program. Maybe you should document all of your processes and systems, right? Maybe you should do this. And the answer is usually, well, we have no time. We get so busy. There's
Totally.
there's so much going on.
Totally.
And I go,
Totally.
okay, well, tell you what, you're going to be close to the public for 2 days. How about we work on that? You're going to pay these people anyway.
Move the ball forward however you can. Keep it moving.
Let's get it going, right?
And it is okay to enjoy some time too. So if you've been working really, really hard, or let's just say hard, then it's okay to say, hey, I'm going to take a little bit of time, snuggle up next to the fire and watch a movie, and I need some downtime. So
Yep.
that's my heart perspective as well. Take
Snuggle
advantage of
away.
that.
Snuggle
Well,
Because
away.
we've all asked for the world to stop for just a week or two, and it did. You know?
I'm here to interrupt because I want that heart train to keep on rolling down the tracks. This is a
Perfect.
really great question on what you guys are talking about. I redacted the name of the business, so I'm just going to
Okay.
insert retail. So I
Okay.
don't want to put my employees at risk, but we still have customers that are able to get around in the snow, and they come to see us for all of their insert business needs. What about them? As a business owner, this feels completely like a lose-lose situation.
I think COVID taught us this too. It gave us a lot of grace, lots of grace, and people understand more, you know, due to the safety of our employees. Unfortunately, we are not open today, and people respect that. And if they don't, they're probably not the customers you want to have.
I mean, unless you're selling life-saving heart medication,
Right. Right. Right.
nothing's going to be that important, right?
Exactly.
Nothing's going to
Yeah.
be make or break. If a customer is willing to drop you as a business, drop you as a patron because you didn't open in the middle of an ice storm where people had like actual difficulty getting places, I think Natalie's point is really it. You don't want him as a customer,
Right.
right? Like you're just not going to get the value of that relationship. That relationship has run its course if they're going to
100%.
be that way. Now,
100%.
again, right? I want to talk about beyond the snow apocalypse thing because we all knew that thing was a 3 day thing and that was going to be it. But sometimes shit happens. And sometimes shit happens individually to your business and everybody else is normal, right? And there's
Yeah.
some out of your control situation that is there. So there's a there's some value on planning and thinking about that kind of contingency. Like, what are you going to do if we cannot sell through our traditional methods? What are we going to do if we cannot open a physical location? What can we do if we cannot get our supplied materials? Right? Those conversations should be happening either way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
happen when the shit hits the fan. They should be happening when things are working.
But Martin, what is the percentage of businesses that you think already have had that conversation proactively?
2%, 1%. I mean, and the thing is that you don't necessarily need to sit down and have a what if disaster strikes
Mm-hmm.
conversation. You need to have a conversation that is called, we just got this really great vendor, right? What happens if we lose it? I always talk to my clients about this difference between their clients, right? The scales of their clients. And I go, look, if you get a whale client, that's awesome. They are like their single relationship is paying for 30% of your revenue. That's fantastic, right? You don't have to do tons of work, and that one pays a quarter of your stuff, right? But you need to have the conversations of what happens when they leave. Not if,
Totally. Yeah.
when they leave, right?
When.
When they
Mm-hmm.
come at you and say, hey, I've been buying stuff from you for this long, I need a discount.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to have all of those discussions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are discussions of permanence. Those are discussions of, well, how do we stay in this game for longer?
You just
Which
caused
is,
me a little bit of tightness of the chest. Not if, when they leave.
that's right, because they
Yeah.
will. Yeah,
Yeah.
things change.
Yeah. Well, diversity in your portfolio of business is always good.
I
I, re-
Yeah,
I and of course, making sure everything is documented, every process, everyone's duties is documented. So
hmm
important to one of those things that can continually be done to kind of avoid some of this. But you're right, like San Diego, they are having some major flooding.
Yep,
People
yep.
have tornadoes, hurricanes, you know, all kinds of things happen. We're pretty lucky in the Pacific Northwest. So we do have to prepare for those things.
Well, and here's the other bit that, kind of a morbid subject matter, but you also have to prepare for what happens if somebody within your business dies or gets sick.
Which is key man insurance. We'll have to go to
There,
that topic.
there's a reason it
Yeah.
exists, right?
Uh-huh.
If you have a partner, right, and you're 50-50 partners, you should eventually have key man insurance on each other.
Yep. It's on my
Because
list.
as much as you love each other, as much as, you know, you hope that nothing ever happens to the other person. If it does, it's going to hurt,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you
For
should
sure.
plan for that. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
that's the difference.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's hear another question.
You guys really touched on a topic that I think a lot of your listeners care about. Because you're not only talking about a lot of things that they'd asked, but they're kind of putting your feet to the fire with some specific questions. So are you ready for some
Oh,
like solution oriented one? I'm going to pair a couple of these. There were tons of questions in how do I recover? How do I recover? Help me recover. So just a couple of them to get the conversation going, and then I'll let you guys run with it because I'm sure there's a lot of meat on this bone. But because of where we're located, we were closed for 5 days.
Mm.
We weren't prepared for that kind of financial loss this month. How do we recover and recover fast? And here's another one to chat about. um, in that same vein, we had to close for weather, but I didn't want my employees to experience hardship. So I paid everyone for those 3 days. With no money coming in, how do I make up that loss? And was that a mistake?
good
That's
questions.
those are great. You
I'm
want to
letting
start, Nat?
Martin take this. No, go ahead.
Yeah, everyone wants to know exactly how to recover this month.
Yes.
Yep, that
Well,
is you.
that's that's going to vary enormously, but I'm going to address the second question first and then circle back to the first, okay? See what I said about every single business I have ever worked with has a list of stuff that they should be doing that they are not doing, and their claim is because of lack of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a
Mm-hmm.
huge list, and it's usually what I call prerequisites of scale. Right, it's usually things that you need to do if you want to get bigger, if you want to get to the next step. Right, training people is a huge one. Right, it's a huge time
Yeah.
interrupter.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a training program, every time you got to train someone, you got to start from scratch, remove somebody who's probably your best player, and burden them with the training of a new person. Right? So if you don't have a training program, something that, it doesn't eliminate that need, but facilitates that significantly, you're bound to have that loss every time you need to get a new person in. Right?
Do
So
something now that saves you hours later
saves you hours and hours and produces the ability to make more money or to make faster money later,
or
right?
save money. Mm-hmm.
Or
As
save
far
money,
as the
right?
training. Mm-hmm.
So training will be one of those. Documenting processes will be another one. Again, I'm gonna make a commercial for documenting processes. People think that that is a like a business luxury,
Mm.
but it's not. You see, here's the thing, right? Let me just put it in the simplest terms I can. If you run your business, right, it's just you and maybe one employee, and you're just doing all this stuff, and you're the owner, right, and you sell that business, the person
Mm-hmm.
buying that business is going to buy a very small fraction of a yearly revenue because what they know is that they're going to have to come in, learn all the stuff from you, and do it themselves too. Instead,
However,
if you have built a process, right, and it's something duplicable that you could give it to an employee or you could choose to do yourself, but it is all there, right? It's value outside of the existence of your own effort. That business sale price is a multiplier. And again, I'm really talking about the
yeah.
valuation that affects not only whether you can sell it or not, it affects how you get loans, it affects how you get financing from third parties, it affects how your business is valued in general, insurance, right? You can insure your business for more. Like there's a lot of ways where you can demonstrate value by creating process.
Yeah, for
So that's
sure.
one thing. And then how to recover? Well, again, it's possible that you're going to be looking at January as a loss month, right? It's
Yeah.
possible. And as long as the difference between the costs, the expenses and the income is not fatal, right? You should be able to work towards the next month on improving, right? You should work towards the next month on recovering. Now, if 5 days of no revenue and paying people are life threatening, maybe the
Mm-hmm.
problem we have is a little deeper than something just in the outside, right? Like that basically means you're running every day on a tightrope, right? That means
Mm-hmm.
you're running every day on very, very slim margins. And what needs to be done is something a little more drastic, right? Needs to be done something a little more strategic than just trying to go and recover.
That's a great point. That's
You can
why he's the man.
you can always build up, right, processes. You can always build up offers. You can say to your
Mm-hmm.
customers, because of this, we're discounting that, right? Come on for a reopening. I mean, like you can build up the reason for why you were closed as a good reason to come back in. But
Absolutely.
again, if you've been running on a razor thin margin, that's probably not going to be enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And then is this a good time to mention like leveraging loans or lines of credit or things like that? I mean, that's kind of why you have them sometimes in these situations. If you've got to cover some payroll and wait to March till you can recoup or that kind of thing.
In the long term, right? Businesses, especially at the beginning stages, have a lot of fear of debt, right? They
Yes.
don't like it. They don't. A lot of people, right, get into business, and when things start happening and things start working, the first thing they do is they pay off their personal debt, and that feels great, right? Like no longer I'm beholden to anybody out here. My business is running, it's paying for me, it's paying for some people. It's great. And then I say the L word and they lose their shit, right?
That's
But
what I
a,
did.
but a business and a person are different, right? So if you have $40,000 in credit card debt, not awesome. But if you have a $300,000 line of credit as a business, that is pretty awesome,
Hmm.
right? That is actually leverage for growth, right? Assuming you use it properly. You gotta use it properly. You gotta use it for growth. You can't use it for catching up.
So you're saying don't use it to catch up.
But there's a chance that you won't be able to get it to begin with if what you need is catching up,
Right.
right?
Right.
But if you're already there, right? Like the scenario that Candace proposed was really good. I closed for 5 days, that's zero revenue times 5 days, but payroll stayed on, right? And that
Hmm.
continued.
Hmm.
Again, if I was that business owner, I wouldn't have just said, okay, we're closed. I'll pay you anyway. I would have said, we're closed. You're working from home. These are the deliverables, right? And it's still light, right? I have a good example of one of those. One of my clients, and I will take no credit for this because he did it all on his own, and I thought it was fantastic. Okay. They work outside. So there's a lot of like weather related stuff. Like those guys probably wouldn't have been able to do this work even if everybody else was working. And we've been working on training programs. We've been working on, design of sort of like a leadership scale in there. So there's all that environment already happening. But out of his own volition, what he did was he let everybody stay home and then asked everyone to produce or to create something to train the rest of the group on, something that they have a domain
Great.
of, right? Anything. It could be anything, right? A guy did hunting, the other guy did splicing of
Oh,
cables. I mean, like,
wow.
and it was just, you guys prepare that, create a little presentation, a talk for 20 minutes, and then when we finally come back, we're going to take time. This is not hit the ground running after we come back either. It's like we're gonna take time,
Yeah.
and you guys are gonna do
Interesting.
this presentation to your coworkers. And I'm like, first of all, that's brilliant in so many ways, right? You kept them engaged. There was nothing else they could be doing. You gave them something to do. You justified the pay, but what you got on in return was a very, very clear picture of their leadership skills, a great picture of who is your future trainer inside of the company. And turns out that more than one have the capacity to be the trainer, which is awesome. We've been looking for that.
Interesting.
And you know, the the value he got out of those people's perception of the company and their relationship with him, that you can't put a price tag on.
Yeah. The intangible
It's
culture that you
insane, right?
created.
It's
Yeah.
insane what he's going to get on the back end of that.
Right. Right. And we're back,
Sup,
Candace.
Candace?
I I'm interrupting because I want to hear Natalie's thoughts on whether or not they should have paid their employees. Would you have done it?
Um, Possibly halfway. Most of our employees are part-time as needed. So if there's not events, they're not getting paid. But then I've got my operations staff. I would have met it kind of halfway. Unless, there's just so much, I'm just feeling so giving, and the bank account says I can be so giving. That's what I would want to do. But you have to look at it realistically to see if you can do that. And if it's going to hurt the business to do that on top of not having business for 3 to 5 days. So I might make, a little project for them to work on, but tell them to not kill themselves at work and tie themselves to their desk from 8 to 5. I would really be like, take care of the family, go more for the high road, try and get some, and then there's just going to be days where we're all not working because we can't do what we need to do. However, on our operations side, we're all in different areas anyway, so we can work online. But it was kind of said it's just going to be those slower days. So enjoy that process and let's just keep moving the ball forward. Now, lots of times it came up in my HR coffee talk that some people, do you have to pay them, and how do you pay them? Do they use their sick time? Do you let them use their PTO? Of course, you need to work with your state to make sure, because everyone has different regulations. But I was on the website today and they said that non-exempt hourly people, you don't have to pay, but exempt salary, yes, if some work was done during the week, then you do need to pay them, is kind of what they said. And they put a sample policy up for this type of situation. There was someone on our HR coffee talk that spoke about how, with the incoming weather situation, knowing it was happening, they said, you guys need to bring all your stuff home in case the office is closed. Well, the office was closed. 90% of people brought their stuff home. There was one or two that didn't follow that instruction. So they didn't bring what they needed home so that they couldn't do any work. And how do you pay them? So that's an interesting situation. Do you ding them for that? Or are you giving the people that worked, no privilege either? So
Yeah,
that was kind of a scenario.
it's an interesting point, right? Like, now, before I go into that point, I want to say, I think that you're not giving yourself enough credit for how your business is structured on answering the first question.
Yes.
Your
Yes.
business is already structured in a way
Yes.
where, like, you pay people for the work done, they get that flexibility and that works for them, right? That is the type of people who want that kind of flexibility, and you give it to them exactly how they need it. Now, all the operation people, and this is where the exempt non-exempt thing comes from, right? Essentially, the difference is, if somebody's salaried, it's expected for them to work at different times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for them, and for the relationship between the business and them to not be like an hourly type of thing. You're not sort of
Mm-hmm.
like, what are you doing this specific hour? Because it's not
Right.
unusual for them to be like, I worked at night on my thing. I did a little work on the weekend. Like, it's not unusual for that to happen. So you don't put like severe boundaries around it. So the way you handle that in the snow scenario is not that different than the way you handle it every day.
Totally. I'm very lucky in that. And there's, pros and cons to that. But
Yeah.
the pros for the employees is they're employees, but they get to set their own schedule. So
Right.
they're not tied down. They can block themselves out. However, if there's no events, then they're not working, thus not getting paid for it.
But it's by design, and I think that you definitely need to take some credit for that.
Thank you.
And on the other question, you see, what happens is, it sounds like that question in your group came from a larger business. In a larger business, it's a little more difficult to do some of this decision making that is case specific, right? So you need to
Mm-hmm.
create policies that apply for everybody and all that. In a smaller company, you would be like, look, it looks like it's going to be closed. I need to ensure that you take your stuff and this, and again, this is the work that I want you to execute when you're out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
Well, now
some
I
of the,
think that policy says that.
for somebody
The
to
new
be
policy.
for somebody to be told you need to take your stuff home and just work from there, it just leaves so much open to them being like, I don't even, I mean, like, I don't, those employees, I don't know, probably calculated that, they were not going to be getting customer calls, so they're not going to be, and that's what they did that. Now, what would I do? I would actually just have a conversation with them and be like, that wasn't fair, right? It wasn't fair for
Right.
everybody else who worked.
Right.
I wouldn't go into the dinging on the cost and the price, and I would be, for me, it'll just drop them a little bit in that scale that I always talk about, right? It's people's
Yeah.
skill and will, right?
Yeah.
If somebody did that, I would be like, that drop you on the will scale a little bit, right? So when I'm
Hmm.
thinking about who to promote, when I'm thinking about who to reward, when I'm thinking about who to give a kudos to, that's not it, right?
And that hurts. It's
Eh,
their own personal culture that just went down.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
I
So
think yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say Candace, I think, has one last question.
I do. Um,
Hello.
So I'm going to remind everybody that that survey is out there. We keep it live at all times. So anybody has any questions on this topic or any topic, you guys sent in some amazing stuff. So keep it coming. And as we go forward, we might do maybe some giveaways or some raffles or some prizes to some of these really awesome questions out there,
Yep.
just to keep
Yeah.
incentivizing, because this has been fantastic.
That's a
So
ridiculous link in there, by the way, but I will put it on the comments after we're done.
Hurry, write it down. Big G, little M, little
Yeah,
L.
maybe a
um,
QR code.
So
Yeah.
the last question for you guys, there was a lot that came from folks on effective communication. A lot of small questions that really sort of fell under the category of how do I make the decision and communicate the decision? So questions like how and when do we decide to close? A couple of people wrote in saying that they made the decision to close, but they waited until the middle of the night, and their employees shared some frustration that they were,
Mm-hmm.
do I set an alarm? Do I not?
Mm-hmm.
Same with the snow's rolling in. When do we call it and send everyone home?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of questions came in under the umbrella of when do I make the decision? How do I communicate the decision? How do I navigate it when we're waiting for the weather?
I think the interesting thing in the Pacific Northwest is so many times they say the snow's coming and
And
nothing
it doesn't.
happens.
Yeah.
So we're kind of one of those where you got to look out in the morning and see. I mean, I know when the snow started coming, I was like, I went to go work out at 5 a.m. and I opened the garage door and I was like, what? I didn't even expect it, because you really don't believe it sometimes in this area until you see it.
Yeah.
So there's that. Of course, it depends on what kind of environment you're in. We're in an event-based business, so we proactively talk to our clients as the information's coming in and say, "What are your take on it?" And here's our take. And then we set a time frame, like by this time we need to know, type of thing. So that's what we did. But as far as corporate, I think better safe than sorry, call it earlier. And the beauty of so much can be done online and not have that risk of someone's safety on the way home or on the way to work.
Yeah. I you know, it's an interesting thing for me to watch businesses do this, right? Usually if they establish a really good culture growing up, right? When they're like a teenager business, they establish a really good culture of flexibility. They become bigger businesses that have a good culture of flexibility. The opposite happens a lot more often, right? Where
Hmm.
like the bigger the company gets, the tighter the rules and the less personal the stuff. Uh, Flexibility would be the key, right? Like let's just say, day one of this thing, we don't know if it's going to hit or not. If you're in a place where you foresee that if this catches you from the lunchtime on, you're not going to be able to go home, stay home, right? Do work from home.
Totally.
One of the things that has been coming up as a bit of a theme for me in the businesses I consult with is kind of forcing people to take a step back and look at the big picture of the business, right? If you start
Yes.
worrying about, if you're the CEO, right, the CEO of a company, you're at the top, you're the founder, you're the owner, and you're not at least taking an occasional glimpse into the horizon of the whole thing, you may miss out on some bigger picture stuff, right? You may miss out on the freedom that comes with, like, look, this is 2 days of weirdness happening, right? This is 2 days of crap in the
Mm-hmm.
grand scheme of things, right? In the 25,000 days that we have ahead of us, that is not going to be a big blip, right? Let's just concentrate on our overall mission and the outcomes that we're trying to pursue at the end of the year, at the end of the 5 year mark. And how does that compare to, like, should people come in tomorrow or not?
Totally.
Right? And
And yeah.
it really puts it all in perspective, and people can relax a little bit.
And I think that comes with experience too. I think in the beginning, things like that would just send me, you know,
Absolutely.
and now I'm like, well, what are we going to do? Keep moving forward.
But
I got
you've
to keep
learned,
my, yeah, but I've learned,
right?
yeah. So,
You've learned, right? You didn't get any, you didn't get more rigid. You learned.
yes, exactly. So if you're feeling like you're in the beginning stage of that, it does get better. Practice it like any muscle, just exercise that and, give yourself 30 minutes to 15 minutes to be all ma and then cut it off and move on and go work on another project.
Talk to someone.
Yeah,
Have a business owner buddy, right? Somebody you can call and say, "Hey, can I can I just dump talk on
100%.
you?" Right? Like, just tell him exactly how crazy he feels, and then take a breath, and then decide before you get an invisible cost, right? By alienating all your employees on whom
Yeah,
you
so
actually depend on.
so I think that that's kind of the theme of today is avoid the invisible costs
I
of
think that's
decisions
a
you
nice
make
one.
around.
That's
Yeah,
a nice one.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. When is our next
So,
show?
yeah, so our next show is February 21st, is that right? Yep.
Yep.
It is at noon, so we've changed the time to noon. So we are redoing a few things and we're trying to get the word out there a little bit more. So it is a new time, noon on Wednesday, first and third, instead of Friday. We thought it's a great time for business owners to plug in their headphones, take a little bit of a lunch, grab a few nuggets of information that might help you go throughout your day and week. And so that's what's coming up. So we look forward to it.
Yeah, let us know if that's working, if that's not working. Please
Exactly.
drop your questions. If you're listening to this on a repeat, feel free to put your questions in there. We always read them, and Candace will pick them up and deliver them to us.
Perfect. In her Candace fashion. She does such a good job. Thank you,
All
Candace,
right.
for being here. Awesome. Make it a great week. And we hope that you can roll on into February and March and go crazy. Here's the benefit you get a day back. February 29th, leap year is here. So you get a whole day
You were not counting on that
to,
one. You get it back.
yeah,
That'll replace one of the snow days. There you
exactly.
go.
And
There's your
we,
loss recovery.
There's your
yep. And
loss.
we get booked for that day. So it's
Make
a
February 29th a record day, and you'll be fine.
perfect. There you go. We solved all of your problems in that last 20 seconds. I hope you
There you go.
stayed with us the full time. Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Have a great week and look forward to seeing you on the 21st, which will make that the end of February. Holy cow.
Already. All right.
All
Bye,
right.
guys. Thank you.
Bye.